Good morning. My name is Sarah Fosholtz. I serve as the board administrator for the Texas State Board of Social Worker Examiners. Today is a board meeting of the Social Work Board. It's January 6th. I'd like to start with a roll call. Chair Brumley.
Present.
Ms. Mosier stated she could not attend. Ms. Andrade.
Present.
Ms. Graham.
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Morris.
Present.
Ms. Romsbacher said she may not be able to attend. Ms. Rogers? Excellent, here she comes. I'll come back. Ms. Science Davila stated she could not attend. Ms. Swords?
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Rogers, are you here?
She got her hand. Oh no, that's her.
Excellent. Can't hear you.
Present.
There we go.
There we go.
Perfect. Okay, we have a quorum and I'll turn the meeting over to Chair Brumley.
All right. So Maria, are we live out there with the public yet?
I'm trying to see.
Do we have, can we tell if we have any attendees?
We do. We have
Okay, so we
34.
have attendees. We see y'all attendees, but we can't, we see you on, we see your names, but we don't see the screen yet. So we're working towards that, but we'll go ahead and get started. So we'll call the meeting to order at about 8:33 on January 6, 2023. Having a quorum, we'll move on to agenda item number 2. Board review and possible action regarding appeals of application for licensure denials, including Annie Warren. So I'll turn it over. I don't know if Attorney Hurt or Hyde, one of y'all have the information on this agenda item?
Yeah, I can speak to it.
Okay, so Attorney Hurt, go ahead.
We did deny the application based on criminal history. You can see the letter in your meeting materials. The most significant one was a conviction per the updated materials from the applicant for manslaughter. Unfortunately, I believe this conviction falls under Chapter 108, which states, sorry, if they're convicted of a felony offense with the use or threat of force, the board does not have any discretion to decide. It's this legislature says you must deny the application, which is a tough situation. We see these, pretty regularly, but I don't believe the board has any discretion in denying this application.
Okay, so Andrew, is this, so your statement indicated use or threat of force. Is manslaughter always that situation, or do we have any leeway within the definition of that to consider what happened?
You could read her letter. I don't know if she's here to speak to it or the background or anything. But a firearm was used. She does say it was in self-defense, but the conviction, force is involved, whether it's justified or not. It's a felony conviction with force, with the weapon, which, there's another board rule that addresses using a felony offense with a weapon.
Okay.
That does give you some discretion, but under 108, the board does not have discretion.
Okay, and in that, under 108, it's shall not. There's no leeway there. Is that correct?
Correct. It says shall deny the application. The other rules that we use, Chapter 53, 105, 42A, it says may deny the application, and that's what gives the board discretion to review the circumstances, the time since the conviction, everything like that. But 108 has been a very harsh background check rule that we have to follow.
Okay.
And Miss Warren is in attendance.
So board, we have Annie Warren, who is present in our participants, and we can hear from her if she has information different than that that's contained in our packet. So are y'all okay with having Ms. Warren speak? I'm seeing heads nod. So, okay. All right, we'll go ahead. Ms. Warren, we'll ask you to unmute and give you an opportunity to address the board.
Good morning. Can y'all hear me?
We
Yes,
can.
ma'am.
Okay, well, I thank you all for considering my application. But what I would like to say is that this was 42 years ago. My husband and I had an abusive relationship and we fought. This day, at this particular day, I'm not quite sure what we were fighting about. And because the abuse had went on for some time, I don't know how to describe to you the abused woman syndrome, but at that particular time, I fought back. And it was a gun in the bedroom where we was fighting. And to be honest with you, I can't even remember picking that gun up. And afterwards, I pleaded guilty because I felt like I was guilty because I did it. I didn't even think about the cause of it at that particular time. But so I went ahead and resigned myself to do whatever the law said I should do. So I completed everything that they asked me to complete. And it was after this situation that I went to school and decided to better myself. I didn't have a degree or a college education during that time. I wanted to get one. I was trying to at that particular time, but the abuse hindered me. It kept me dropping out of school. But afterwards, I finished a bachelor's degree, went to work with that bachelor's degree, went back to school and got a master's, went to work with that master's. Then I got the LCSW while in the state of Tennessee. And I have worked with that degree in the state of Tennessee since then. And you can see it in the application. I put my transcript in there. That's a true and honest transcript. I've never had an issue on the job. I never had any issues with anyone that I worked with. I got along very well with my co-workers, and there is nothing else on my record.
This meeting is being recorded.
I'm sorry.
That we're catching up. You're good, Ms. Warren. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. There is nothing else. That's the only thing in my background. And because the state of Tennessee gave me some grace and allowed me to work with that degree, I felt like I honored them by doing a good job with that degree. And I'm just asking you all to give me the opportunity to work in the state of Texas. I know with social work, our job is to do no harm. And you can look at my record and see that I have not done any harm. As a matter of fact, I have helped a lot of people with that degree, and I just want to continue.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that, Miss Warren. And I appreciate your honesty and your opportunity and the time you took to address us today. Board members, do you have any questions or input as to Miss Warren's information? Miss Warren, are you residing in Texas currently, or are you still living in Tennessee?
Yes, I just moved here in the month of July.
Okay. Okay. So have you maintained your Tennessee license?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So Patrick, are you raising your hand?
Yeah, I was just gonna throw one more thing out there is that the chapter 108 that says shall deny, it only applies to applicants for psychology and social work. It doesn't apply for LPC or MFT applicants. So I don't know which direction I just wanted to put out if she were to apply for one of the other licenses that BHAC can issue, 108 is maybe not going to be an issue, hold her up. So that's just that board again will still have to consider the the conviction, but it's not an automatic denial under 108. I guess I just wanted to add that to the discussion.
Okay.
And that was licensed professional counselor or
And
marriage and family therapist.
Correct.
And if Miss Warren were able to get her record expunged, she'd be eligible to reapply for social work.
If it's expunged, it doesn't exist anymore.
okay.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Warren, what we're saying here is there is a legal process, and please understand, I'm going to explain this in layman terms because I'm not an attorney. If you need Andrew or Patrick to explain it, maybe they can do it better. But an expunged criminal history means that you have taken legal action where that criminal action took place. So you would have to go back to that court and ask that after this time period that the history be expunged, meaning erased. By doing that, you could then reapply through Texas for your licensure here, and it would be considered, and that history would no longer exist in our eyes. So there is that process that you could take. I'm going to take from Attorney Patrick's statement too, that we have a rule in social work that we shall not issue a license when these instances exist, but two other partners in our larger board, BHEC, do not have that same rule. So I would assume that maybe some action on your part to ask for rule changes could exist, but that would take a change in statute, which is a legislative action. So we independently as a board, don't have the way to do that. So you may take action on your own. But at this time, Andrew, do we need a motion to maintain the standing as it is?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So at this time, I would entertain a motion from the board on agenda item number 2, review and action concerning denial of licensure for Annie Warren.
So moved.
So moved in what way, Megan?
Well, we don't have a choice. We have to deny it.
Okay, so we have a motion from board member Megan Graham to deny the application. Need a second?
A second.
Have a second from Katie Andrade. Board members, please signify by voting yes by raising your hand or saying aye. All right, any opposed? Any abstained? All right, seeing none, the motion passes. So Ms. Warren, unfortunately, based on the current standings in law, your licensure at this time is denied, but hopefully you can take some steps on your own to improve your lot. And I do appreciate you coming this morning and making the efforts to make the changes you made in your life. And hopefully we'll see you again here. Thank you for coming.
Okay, thank you. And what were the other licensures that didn't have this rule applied to it?
So it was licensed professional counselors, LPCs, and licensed marriage and family therapist, LMFTs.
And I'll
Okay.
follow up with you in an email, Ms. Warren, after this meeting. So you'll have in writing what transpired today with the board.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Ms. Warren.
Bye.
Okay. All right, so moving on, agenda item number 3, board review and possible action regarding agreed orders to be executed by the board. So
To my
Sarah,
knowledge, there are none, but I'll defer to the attorneys if they have anything to bring to the board.
Andrew, Patrick, y'all have anything on agreed orders?
No.
Nothing on this agenda item.
Nothing at all. All right, well, we'll move on to agenda item number 4. Board review and possible action regarding contested cases from the State Office of Administrative Hearings, or SOA. Anything there, Patrick or Andrew?
I do have a SOA hearing on February 1st regarding an application denial. It is another situation under Chapter 108, so I believe it'll go smoothly. The judge should, rule in our favor, but that'll be on February 1st, and I should have an update for you at the next board meeting.
Okay, thank you for that. Report of agreed orders executed by the council's executive director.
And that report was included in your packet, so if you have any questions.
Board, anybody had opportunity to, everybody's had opportunity to review agenda item number 5. Anybody have any questions related to that? Hearing none, seeing none, we'll move on. All right, agenda item number 6, report of cases dismissed by the council's executive director. I'm sure that's also included.
Correct. I'll entertain any questions that you may have.
Anybody have any questions? That would have been our first quarter report. That's right.
That's correct.
Sarah? Okay, so our first quarter of 2023. Anybody have any questions related to agenda item number 6? All right. Number 7, status report of quarterly enforcement case activities. So that's agenda item number 7 in your packet.
If you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
So just looking down through that, we are moving in a positive direction. I will give kudos to the board staff, and to BHEC in general for our ability to clean up things. I don't know. I know there was dates in there that I looked at before. Oh, they're down at the bottom about, so the oldest things that looks like exist are back in 03. I'm sorry, back in 2017. There are 3 from 2017. So yeah, seeing that we are cleaning up that backlog that we came over with.
And just to update, I scanned the database back in November, and the social work cases, the earliest or oldest cases are from fiscal year 2020. So while the agency has a few cases from 2017, 2018, et cetera, the social work cases are up to 2020.
Oh, well, we're doing even better, aren't we? So
Thank you to staff.
yes, thank you much. So that process does seem to be working, where we're using the matrix and moving through things efficiently. So that's been a positive thing. And I thank the board members that were part of creating that process. So agenda item number 8, report of compliance with agreed orders.
That report was in your board packet. I'll be happy to answer any questions if I may.
Any questions, anybody? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. And agenda item number 9 is discussion and possible action concerning Association of Social Work Boards, or ASWBs, August 5th, 2022 release of exam pass rate analysis and subsequent activities. But so this morning we have asked ASWB representatives, and I know we have their I know Jennifer was going to be on, and I see Stacy there. So Stacy Hardy Chandler, who is Stacy, I don't know if I think you're the CEO. Is that your official title? So she is there. And at this time, I will just address briefly that back in August, ASWB took a step towards releasing data as related to diversity and equity and inclusion related to passing test scores for social work exams. And there's been lots of discussion and fussing and cussing and all kinds of things that have gone along with that release. But ASWB is a partner in this process. of licensure, and we wanted to hear directly from them. So we've asked them to come today, and I will now turn agenda item number 9 over and to Stacy Hardy Chandler. So good morning and welcome to Texas.
Thank you so much. And actually, I'm coming to you from Los Angeles, so it's quite early, but this is very, very important. So I'm here. So let me, I'm going to share my screen. I'm very grateful for the invitation to come here. We know that there are lots of discussions about this without us, so to speak. So to be here in this space to kind of go over this information directly, we're very pleased to be able to do that. I do want to acknowledge my colleagues who are also joining us this morning. Lavina Harless, who is the Senior Director of Exam Services, and Jennifer Hinkle, who, as you know, is the Senior Director of Member Services, Member Engagement and Regulatory Services. We also have Dale Atkinson, who is our attorney. And if possible, I'd like that to request that he be elevated to panelist, because there's a portion of this presentation that he's going to be covering, if that's okay. And then I'll just jump right in. Like I said, I appreciate this time. I'll go over a brief presentation and would be certainly happy to entertain questions at the end. I think this is really going to be helpful to build on the introduction about what's been happening since the data release. We've gotten a lot of questions about the exams. There's a lot of information out there, misinformation, disinformation. So we really appreciate this sort of opportunity to hear from us, your organization. I always like to start out these presentations with our mission. You, of course, know our mission, but just as a reminder that we provide support and services to the social work regulatory community. We are not outside of the regulatory community. The 64 jurisdictions that make up our members across the United States and Canada are us, and we are you. There's no separation in the sense that how it's been, the relationship has been portrayed in some documents. But I just want to always reinforce that we report to our member boards through the board of directors that are elected by them. So we report to you. The other part of our mission is to advance safe, competent, and ethical practices to strengthen public protection. I always like to emphasize this because sometimes there are people in the audience who may be new to regulation or may not really understand the core of what regulation is all about. So I really like to just reiterate what we as regulators know is that core mission, that core function of public protection. But there's another piece of what we do that I think is particularly relevant when we talk about the exams, and that's this issue of accountability. We're accountable to the public. And in order to be accountable, we're responsible for the mechanisms we use to make these decisions, whether they're the laws or whether they're tools, and that helps support our accountability to uphold the public trust. And I think that theme sort of runs throughout this discussion about what role the exams play. So moving on in our brief time together today, I'd like to share a couple of things. I'd like to come away from this experience with giving you some accurate information about the exam development process, including the very robust anti-bias measures that are built into how high-stakes licensure exams are developed. The second thing is I want to provide an overview of ASWB's upstream solution-focused approach to collaborating across the profession, addressing what are disparate outcomes. The pass rates are very disturbing, and we have an opportunity to do something about that from our regulatory space in collaboration with other parts of the social work system. We're not educators, but we want to work with the educators. We're not the entity overseeing practice, but we want to work with practice. So I think there are opportunities to address this when we understand that this is a systemic issue. And of course, on the side there, you're familiar with the elements of licensure, and I'll touch on those a little bit later on. The other thing that's come up, this is kind of a new slide that I've included because we've gotten questions or comments about why social work even has to be a profession. And I have to say that the position of ASWB is that social work is in fact a profession, and we stand by it being a profession, particularly knowing the needs of the populations that we serve. We are specifically assigned to serve the most vulnerable populations, and they deserve professionals. So a professional is a type of job that requires special training, elevated training of applied competence in practice. So the competence then is measured against a standard, and that's not just for social work, that's for medicine, that's for law, that's for nursing, that's for any profession. There's a standard by which competency is measured. So therefore, we believe social workers are professionals, the ones who are engaged in this work with those elevated skills and qualifications, and are compensated at the level of professionals because of that specialized training, education, and expertise. And then finally, just reiterating our role in professional regulation, that we protect the public by verifying minimum competence. It's a huge responsibility the public has entrusted in us, investigating complaints and upholding professional compliance with state laws and regulations, as you know. But again, that has implications for the test. So why measure competency with an exam? First of all, the Texas State Social Work Board of Examiners is in the name. And there's a reason for that. Essential to the regulatory duty to better verify minimum competency is overseeing some component of those decisions. And the exam provides us an opportunity to oversee a component of that decision-making about a person's readiness to enter practice. The other thing is the exams are an objective component of licensing decisions, regardless of what state you're practicing in or what jurisdiction. It's that consistent thing that is not subject to a lot of variation like some of the other components. It is continuously vetted based on, as I mentioned before, entry to practice level competency. This is different from educational competency, right? It's not a capstone to an educational experience. It's entry to the career that's ahead. And for that reason, the exam serves our purposes as regulators. Does it have to always be the exam in the form that it is? No, we're open to whatever is going to meet that objective for us. So at this point, I want to turn it over to Dale Atkinson, who is our attorney, and he'll go over the defensibility, reliability, and validity of our exam. Dale?
Well, good morning, everybody. And somebody give me a thumbs up. Can you hear me? I can see you, Ben. And excellent. Thank you. And thank you, Stacy. And let me start out by at least acknowledging and thanking all the volunteer board members and the Texas staff as well for the important role you play in regulation. And so you're not thanked enough. So I will at least throw out that big thank you to each and every one of you for the important role you play. Stacy turns this over to me to talk a little bit more about the technical side, the legal side of exam development and validation, which is really important to have some basic knowledge about. And what I'm about to describe to you, it can get a little technical, it can get a little deep, but it is used by all of the exam development organizations like ASWB and all the professions. And I have represented ASWB for decades, and I also represent many other ASWB-like organizations. So a quick reminder to what Stacy's already said, ASWB is your organization. You are a member, and the organization provides you with programs and services to lessen burdens on state government, to promote uniformity, and provide defensible measures of assessment, which is in part why we're talking today, is this examination program. So, excuse me, I'm getting over a cold, so I might cough a little bit here. I apologize. So first off, on the technical side, and as I've mentioned, all licensure exams, all entry-level competence exam or determiners or assessment mechanisms use this process that follows industry standards. And this is done in order to provide a legally defensible program in the event of a challenge. It's absolutely critical that this be one, undertaken, and two, is be understood, at least to the basics, for all those that are relying upon it, because government has stepped in and chosen to regulate. So an exam is valid because it measures it is intended to measure. That's one giant factor that it determines, is this an appropriate mechanism to use in a government system of licensure? So that validity is driven by data that is gathered, and the exam is ultimately developed to assess the competence that is identified in that data. Now, you're going to hear a lot more about this from Stacy in just a minute. So I just at least want to touch on a few of these phrases, and I'm also happy to answer any questions if anybody has them. So that validity factor, it tests what it's intended to test. Reliability is that those with similar knowledge, skills, and ability will have similar scores on the examination program. These could be different individuals. It could be the same person. If I'm unsuccessful on the exam and I do not undertake measures to increase my knowledge, skills, or abilities where I was weak, if you will, I will get likely the same result or a very close factor of that same result. So that is a reliability factor that is also undertaken as part of these industry standards as far as an assessment goes. And so this is all data that's collected. In general, it's called psychometrics. And without getting too deep into all of these terminology issues, this validity and reliability creates legal defensibility, meaning that if there's a challenge to the exam program from a legal perspective, that it can be defended, and it is doing what it is intended to do, and it has been developed, excuse me, in a manner following these industry standards that will then provide that legal support. So why is there an examination program? One is, again, it benefits the member boards, Texas, and all of the other members within the organization itself. It promotes uniformity, so exam scores can be recognized for purposes of licensure transfer, mobility, portability, and the movement of practitioners, be it virtual movement or physical movement from one jurisdiction to the next. And it's that kind of this validity and legal defensibility is kind of that insurance policy that exists in the event of that challenge. So it can be then defended and stood behind. And so, as I've mentioned, all exam programs that are used for competence assessment as entry level for all the professions follow the industry standards that you're about to hear about now as well. So a little foundation for me on the technical legal side. I will turn this back over to Stacy to address now some of the processes that take place in order to get to this point of legal defensibility. So I'm happy to answer questions, but Stacy, I'll give it back to you.
Thank you, Dale, and I really appreciate that. Dale mentioned validity. The measures are defined, the information is defined by people from the field, and how do we get that information? All professions do that through a practice analysis. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Dale's focus naturally is the legal defensibility, but I would argue that the exam process is morally defensible as well because of the diligence that's taken as part of this overarching exam development and administration. So let's move on to that. If you read anything that says ASWB is not meeting industry standard, we're not only meeting it, in some cases, other organizations come to us for consultation, so we are exceeding industry standard. That includes our psychometric measures, as well as the integration of social work subject matter expertise balanced in the exam development process. So let's go over how that happens. Stick with me here. So the exams are developed by almost 200 people. Of those people, 20 are personnel of ASWB who have nothing to do with the exam content, only structuring the exam development and administration process. So there are about 20 staff members devoted to that. We have a number of vendors that we work with that are external to ASWB. This includes our independent psychometricians, Pearson VUE, where the exams are taken, and other vendors who contribute to the process. We have 7 item development consultants. Their pictures are right there on the right side of your screen. Unique in some professions, we actually pay item development consultants because of the elevated quality that we get from the work that they contribute to this process. And we have about 65 social work volunteers who are members of committees, as well as about 90 item writers. These volunteers and item writers, again, are not ASWB employees. They're your colleagues at your workplaces. They're social workers, across the profession who answered the call to step up to volunteer and be a part of this process. So that's who contributes to structuring this. Just wanted to reiterate that item writers come from your neighborhoods, your workplaces. When we do a call for item writers, we try to select for diversity, diversity along multiple dimensions. We want people from the South. We want people from the North. We want people from the East, the West. We want people from the US. We want people from Canada. So we get representation from both countries. We get representation in terms of social work practice areas. So we get school social workers, private therapists, community organizers. We want diversity that way. We get people who are relatively early on in their career, people who are about to retire. And we get people from different racial and ethnic backgrounds. So we want to have item writers reflect the diversity of the field of social work, and they're the ones who are coming up with the items. Quick overview of the exam. There are 170 items or questions. 150 of those items are scored, 20 are pre-tested, and you will learn why that's so important in just a bit. Currently, the exam is set up that it's multiple choice with 4 options. Starting this month, we will be rotating in examinations where there will only be 3 items. And we've done this because of a data-informed process. The data is telling us that that third wrong answer is not helping candidates or hurting them. It's just more to read. So by eliminating that third wrong answer, so it's now a correct answer in 2, and again, this will be phasing in starting this month. We help to relieve the candidates' cognitive load, what they have to deal with while they're taking the test, and that's going to be instituted. In addition, note that there's a universal passing score. So the score that I get in Texas is and it's a passing score, that's the same score I need to get in British Columbia. The items are randomly administered so that Dale, who's sitting next to me in the exam room, if by some odd reason he's able to access my test, the item 13 is going to be different from my item 13. There are also, sometimes we talk about the test for convenience, but there are really multiple forms of the test that are rotated quarterly. And again, this is in an effort to maintain integrity of the testing experience. And right now they're administered at Pearson VUE centers so that even the physical environment is consistent for test takers, trying to maintain that similarity across the experience. So this, I think, is the meat and potatoes of why we're here talking about examinations, and that is how the test gets developed. And it really starts before any item is written. And that's what the recruitment process, which I described before, really trying to reach a broad spectrum of the social work profession. In addition to that, they are taught how to write items to avoid things like microaggressions, to include very clear language, not a lot of jargon. I believe the tests were assessed to be at a 10th grade reading level. This is not testing reading. We're wanting to test critical thinking. And so they get training on how to do all of that. Then we move to the middle column where the items are created. Items come in consistently or constantly on an ongoing basis. So when those 90 people that you saw earlier are writing items, they're submitting them to those 7 item development consultants that you met earlier. And they're our first line of defense in terms of looking at bias. So the item is reviewed by them. They can send it back up to the item writer to rewrite, or they can send it on to a committee, but submission of an item does not put it right on the test. I remember serving on faculty at a university, and certainly I could come up with items for my class on a Tuesday and administer it to them on Friday. That's not the case here. There's a robust process of multiple layers of review. So we get over to the third column of item validation. Let's say our item development consultants give an item a thumbs up. It's going to go to the committee that is looking at items for that particular level of testing. For Texas, there are the bachelor's level tests, master's, and clinical. So those are different committees who are looking specifically at those items for those levels. Of course, the item can be, once again, returned for revision. If in their judgment, there's something that should be improved, it can be accepted or it can be rejected. If it is accepted, it goes into pre-testing. In the pre-testing process, that's those 20 questions. Remember I said there were 170 and 20 are not scored? That's those questions that are in pre-testing where we are watching the statistics and seeing if there are any groups that are performing differently on those items than other groups. So here is where the statisticians and the psychometrics really come into play. If we're not seeing any difference by self-reported demographics, then and only then does the item eventually make it onto the test as one of those 150 scored items. If we're seeing significant differences between different demographic categories, then it's flagged for differential item functioning and it can be kicked out. So that's how that process goes. Even when the item goes on the test, they continue to be monitored for how they're functioning. So given all of that, the question is, why are there disparities? And I think it's a very good question. I think the answer is a complex one. And I think we have to recognize that people do not come out of the sky into the testing room. They come with a history, they come with experiences. And in particular, I think it's important to note that in a country with a deep and profound history of racism and specifically anti-Blackism, systemic racism is very real, and candidates are not coming to the exam process with equal preparation opportunities. I want to use an example that resonates for me personally. I saw an interview by Misty Copeland. And one of the things she was saying was why she's a Black ballerina. And one of the things she was hearing is, why are we not getting more ballerinas and Black ballerinas into ballet companies? And what's the problem? We have the auditions and we tell people about the auditions and those kinds of things. And basically she said, if you're asking at the audition, it's too late. You have to get them in the schools. People have experiences and barriers way before being exposed to an audition. And I'm sure, you know, I'm just using this as a metaphor, sort of as an example. You can take out audition and you can put in health outcomes. We see these same disparities, unfortunately, in an environment where there's systemic racism in health outcomes. We see this in K-12 achievement. We see this in house appraisals, where before whitewashing, my house would be appraised at a lesser amount than Dale's house. So this is, there's the recognition that there is a systemic issue here, and systemic issues require a systemic response. What did Misty Copeland do? She created a school. And that is what starts to explain how ASWB is responding in the aftermath of publishing this information, is we're trying to do something about it that is upstream. So I mentioned before the requirements for licensure. As board members, you're well aware of this. You take into consideration education from an accredited institution, a CSWE accredited institution. But we know that there are variables there. There's academic freedom that allows for a wide range of educational experiences from one school to another, even within the same jurisdiction, increasing emphasis on adjunct faculty. So there's, while there's accreditation, that is a huge bucket with a lot of space in it. We know experience is important for the clinical exam. I had the great fortune of having a very diligent clinical supervisor who challenged me to think critically, who, was really on top of it as a supporter, as an educator. But if we're honest, if we're truly honest, we know that there are some who are quote unquote signing off on hours. And there can be variability in terms of interpretation of moral character. So the objective element in this formula of public protection and accountability is really the exam and what it adds objectively. Now, I am not saying that the exam should substitute for education or experience. What I'm saying is that my training as a social worker says you need to make good decisions based on multiple data points. The exam fits into this formula as a type of data point that is distinct from the other two in terms of its objectivity, continuous vetting, and those kinds of things. So I think you need the whole formula to make better decisions. So what are we doing upstream? ASWB has put together a social work workforce coalition of major social work organizations across the profession. There were a couple of meetings last year, one in April, one in August, and we're looking forward to the next meeting of this workforce to hear from those voices across the profession. We recognize as regulators, we are in one lane. We are in one subsystem of a larger system, but we're going to be active in extending the opportunities for collaboration. The other thing is the social work census. Remember back when Dale introduced the notion of validity and we talked about the practice analysis? Well, historically, that's been done every 5 to 7 years, again, to refresh what we know from practitioners about what's needed for entry to practice. It's time to do it again, to hear from those people who are working out in the field, who basically design the blueprints for the new versions of the exam. So again, that happens every 5 to 7 years or so. But this time we want to make a broader effort to include as many voices as possible. So we've gone from the practice analysis to what I call the practice analysis on steroids, which is conducting a social work census. That will take place in 2024. So encouraging people to contribute to what the exam looks like. Again, that's designed and developed by practitioners. We've expanded our suite of resources to educators. Resources to educators have been available for years, but have been woefully underutilized. We've expanded those, made those for free. In addition, we provided a webinar set up or geared toward educators in December 7th. We had about 400 attendees. Texas, by the way, had the largest representation for a jurisdiction. So thank you for that. Thank you for attending. And we will continue to partner with our educator colleagues. In addition, this year, actually few months, we'll be launching community conversations. These are focused on listening to practice in their work and doing that in regions, again, across the US and Canada. So as you recall, the information was published, but let me talk a little bit about what actually came out. So there was a report of the national information across the US and Canada, and the pass rates, the eventual pass rates, disaggregated by race, by age, by English as a first language. So all of this was descriptive data that was compiled in the past year prior to the publication, and that is available on the website for anyone to review. I would discourage looking at, I don't know, Twitter screenshots and things like that. Go to the exam, look to the report, look at it for yourself, look at it in its 88-page entirety. In addition, there was an interactive map that was developed. So you can go to Texas specifically and look at the data for Texas. You can look at the data for the state that you went to, or any state you're curious about. So that is available online to everyone, to the public. And in addition, you can generate reports for each and every one of the over 800 social work programs across the United States and Canada. You put in your state, you put in the school, and you can see the report of that particular school. Previously, only pass rates were available, pass fail kind of thing. Now schools can look at their own, and again, this is what the schools the candidates say they attended, their own breakdown, and also by content areas. So hopefully they can use this information in some of their curriculum development considerations. Just a quick overview. Again, this information is available online, but just wanted to highlight the pass rate data in a snapshot for Texas in particular. The 78.6 first-time pass rate for the clinical exam is, I believe, a little bit higher than the national average, which is 76.1, I believe. And then the master's exam, it's a little bit lower than the national average. That's about 76.1, so about 1 percentage point below. And the bachelor's exam pass rate, you can see there, it's a little bit lower than the national pass rate, which is 74.4. And you can also see the school breakdown. Again, this is not to call out any program, but even here, you can see the range vary from, in just looking at the clinical exam, the last category, you can see variation from 33% pass rate to an over 80% pass rate, 84% pass rate. So a lot of variations by programs. We needed to ask the questions about why that's the case. What are programs doing differently in different areas, even in Texas? So finally, I just want to address some questions that tend to come up. As boards, you have received toolkits with another way this information has been put together for your benefit. That came out immediately when the data was published, and I think there was another one right before the delegate assembly in November. But of course, anything that you would need, we would certainly want to get that information for you. One question that comes up is, why is the disaggregated data being published now? We report to the board of directors that you elect. And the board of directors voted in November of 2021 to make the investment in analyzing 10 years of data and put that in a form that's publicly accessible. So to do that, that's a major investment. There are over 66,000 tests that are administered, every year. So the myth that this data was just there and all we had to do is push a button and release it is not accurate. So our board made this, I think, monumental step to invest in this analysis and to continue this analysis on an ongoing basis and make it publicly available. And we do what our board directs. What are the exam ramifications on the social work profession? I get very, very concerned when we look at options that are different from what professions do. So Dale talked about working with us as social work, but also working with a large number of other associations. So when we start to kind of eat away at some of the things that professions do that are help them to be accountable to the public, I get very concerned about deprofessionalization. Social work struggles with the status as a profession, and I think we have to protect that status. And we know that that tends to be the case with historically female professions, with teachers, with nurses, threats to deprofessionalization. So I'm concerned about that. Will the test be developed in other languages? So right now in Canada, for example, there are regions where by law, information has to be in both English and French. So we're starting there. We're starting with the French exam and looking at how we can accommodate that and what we learned from that. And then we'll take what we learned from that experience and look at other ways to translate the exam. As you can see from the development process, it's not a single exam that you can run through Google Translate, right? And those who speak other languages know that translation of the words doesn't mean translation of the meaning. And so you don't want to set up an inequitable testing situation. So it's a very complicated process that we're looking to learn about as we look at the French exam. What impact does all of this have on the multi-state compact? Well, it certainly raised a number of additional conversations since a national exam is a part of the state compact. But I think more importantly, I hope that the compact moves forward for the mobility reasons that have come up earlier, the ability not only physically, but virtually to work across jurisdictions. And what can the broader social work community do? A lot, participate certainly in the initiatives that I've talked about before. But I think we have to ask the question, does the thermometer cause the fever? Does the thermometer cause the fever? And I think there can be focus on the thermometer, and that's certainly okay. And that's something that needs to be done. But ASWB is going to be about the work of working collaboratively across the profession to work on the cause of the fever, which in this case is racism and oppression. And we can't do it alone. We want to work with educators. There's lots of opportunity with supervisors in practice. We're going to work on those factors that mitigate that fever, mitigate that racism across the board. So I would also recommend questioning those sound bites that are presented as so-called facts. What are the citations? How old are the citations? Where is this coming from? Just as we know, from social work, taking that more holistic approach. The other thing is that we will be putting out an RFP for research. The data that was released, as extensive as it was only descriptive data. It was only a first step. It's only a baseline. It raises a lot of questions. Why is it that the scores have more gaps, more disparities in the Southeast than it does in the Northwest with the same passing score? Something's going on in the circumstances. Why is it that we have schools where there are not racial disparities? What are those schools doing that's different from the ones where there are huge gaps in racial disparities? These are questions we don't know the answer to, but we shouldn't be guessing about that. We should be getting the accurate information from those places. And so we want to support the research that heads in that direction. And then finally, we certainly invite you to continue to use us as your member organization. We are you, you are us, and we are a resource to you. So I want to thank you for your time and attention this morning. Really appreciate being here.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Stacy. Thank you, Dale. Before I ask board members, I do have a question for Stacy or Dale, 2 or 3. So back in the slide that you had up, Stacy, where it talked about how an item progresses through to making it from the pre-test to the scored test, there were 2 outcomes there. One was good and it went right to the pre-test, and the other, you indicated if there were not the outcomes of that question were not supported. And you indicated that maybe you look at it through the diversity lens. Are there other factors that could rule a question out from being added to the scored exam other than diversity?
Let me rephrase that. We
Okay.
want candidates to perform across the board on that item. That we want that item to perform well across the board. So if there are any differences in one group versus another, then that's kicked out. So I want to flip that, how I couch that. So we're looking for the consistency of performance. If there is any difference in the performance, that's when it's flagged for death.
Okay. And
Thank
then
you for the opportunity to offer that clarification.
yeah, and that question could eventually make its way after it's reworked or arranged in a different way. It goes back to committee and it could still flow through to the scored exam if it does show later to be a good question.
Yes, some questions can be reworked, but it still goes back into pre-testing. So it still isn't going to go straight on the test. Nothing goes straight to the scored portion of the test. It's more likely to be kicked out. So more likely to be eliminated. If anything, it may be examined for why it was kicked out by the committees. But yes.
And
great question.
in your last discussion point there. You made indication that maybe some things in the southeast versus the northwest of the United States had differences. Is that something that's also looked at in the validity of a question about how it scores geographically?
We don't look at that in the validity of the question per se. What we're looking at that is in terms of the trends. So is that something that we might look at in terms of future research? I don't know. I think there are a lot of questions. There are a lot of unanswered questions that we need to examine.
Okay. And then my last question is, you talked about sort of the collaborative effort. And I know in meetings previously, ASWB has talked about partnering with NASW and CSWE and boards and members and everything. And that is the move towards the future, that those other legs of the stool have been invited to discuss the exam.
I started this job in July. I know that the exam was discussed with them before I took this job on, and I have personally met with the CEO, now retired as of December 31st of NASW, and the CEO of CSWE, now retired as of December, monthly since I've been on board. So those conversations have been ongoing. That is a high priority, knowing that, again, this is a systemic issue. And to be separated or isolated from other parts of the system, it's not going to be helpful in moving the needle. So those conversations have to happen. And I aim to continue those conversations with the new CEOs that are coming on board in the upcoming months. I do want to point out with the statistics questions, we get a number of those, and not being a statistician myself, I can only go so far in my responses, but we're designing a webinar so that people can come and listen to hear directly from the psychometricians about how all of those statistical elements of the test development process works. So we will send that information out and mark your calendars. I expect it to be another very well attended webinar, but we are responding to the questions and doing our best to provide that communication.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Stacy. Any other board members have any questions for Stacy or Dale while they're here, or any of the other members of NASW that are present? I mean, ASWB that are present.
I have a question. I believe that when you're looking at the statistics for the DIF factor, that's an ongoing process. So even once you clear it for the test, you're still testing the question. You're still looking at the statistics. That's correct?
That is correct. That it, even after it makes it, even an item that makes it onto the scored portion, it's still monitored on an ongoing basis. So yes.
And then on the slide that Attorney Atkinson was describing, under reliability, there was phrasing to the effect of similarly situated test takers yield similar results. What criterion, or how is a test taker defined as similarly situated? Are you looking at the self-reported demographics?
We're looking at self-report. We also know that there is a lot of consistency over time in terms of how the test in the larger group performs. So we do get the same kinds of numbers over time. And that's why you can't look at reliability alone. It's the combination of the reliability. It consistently pulls for what it's designed to pull for. So, and probably our statisticians could tell you a little bit more about that. Dale, is there anything you wanted to add about the reliability piece?
Yeah, I would only add that it's probably best to try, when you digest a lot of this information, is to think about just one individual. If I take the test and don't perform well and I do nothing, I likely will not perform well on the next go around as in addition. And so remember, it is a criterion referenced exam, meaning everyone can pass if they demonstrate the competence. So it's probably best, I may have misled by using some of those phrases, I apologize, but it's probably best when you digest a lot of this to think about it on an individual basis rather than similarly situated. That's probably not good terminology, and I'll probably not say that again, maybe next time I have these discussions, but.
Thank you.
Good point.
I think it was the very next slide, it said ASWB meets or exceeds industry standards. And I think what I understood that to be was the standards of the industry that does professional exams.
That's
as
right.
opposed to social work professional standards.
Licensing exams at the professional level for entry to practice is what I would say. That process that I went through on the side of, the item development, that's not made up by ASWB. Professional high stakes exams follow that process, regardless of the profession. Dale, you can probably speak to that more, but I think also, we really, how you execute that matters. And I know for us, we're really diligent about the recruitment process and really trying to cast a broad net in terms of those who write our items and those kinds of things. And others have consulted with us trying to achieve that level of diversity for their own fields. And that's why I mentioned that example. But that model for high stakes professional examinations of those entering the field, that's the state of the art now. Could that process evolve? Of course.
Thank you.
So Daryl has his hand up. Daryl, you have a question for either Stacy or Dale?
Yeah. Dale, I was just going to say, I think you're the first person that's ever appeared on a meeting with a penguin in the screenshot. So we'll cut you a little slack on the terminology used. Dr. Hardy Chandler, one question I had on y'all's working relationship with CSWE. Are y'all going to be talking about, you can identify which schools have some problems on the pass rates? Are y'all looking at that in terms of, hey, are they meeting the accreditation standards? Is that something y'all are going to be looking at with them?
So first of all, we are absolutely going to be having conversations because, as I mentioned before, I feel like, we have to acknowledge that people have experiences coming into the exam. What that will look like, we have a lane, right? So we don't want to overstep and portray ourselves as educators, but we do want to provide educators education based on accurate information about licensure. Are you even mentioning licensure? In 2022, as we learn more, we ask more questions. In 2022, we started asking candidates for the exam, did your educational institution mention licensure? Of those taking the test in 2022, 40, I believe it's 47 or 42 or 40, Lavina can correct me, but it's in the 40% of candidates who said their school never mentioned, or their recollection is their school never mentioned licensure as part of their educational experience. So one of the things would be, we're a resource to the educators about licensure, not just the exam, about the licensure process, providing information that is jurisdiction specific. We encourage accreditation to take into consideration what's going to happen afterwards, but we have to work collaboratively with them, and our goal is to do that.
Okay. I think it'll be important for us to work with CSWE on, once we have identified some problems in the pipeline there, and maybe see if there's not some patches or something we can do to shore up that segment of the pipeline if it's causing a problem for folks.
Absolutely. And can I elaborate just a moment? We, in the research realm, we do want to find out, over 800 social work programs. So we do want to look at what are those schools that are not showing disparities, because they exist and social workers are strengths focused, right? What are those schools doing, and how can SWB be instrumental in sharing that information generously to those institutions who may not be doing those things or could be doing those things? How can we share that information? I feel like that's a vital role. So again, we want to recognize our own boundaries. We do have certain boundaries, but we want to be a hub of that kind of information to every extent possible.
Well, let's go up to those boundaries. There's no setbacks here. Let's go up to them. But
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
the validation, are y'all looking at doing validation by any outside parties? I know ASPPB has done that with that EPPP Part 2. They went to California, whatever California's. Dale, help me out here. What's that entity over in California that does exam validation for them? If you know.
Yeah, I can't remember the name offhand, but ASWB does undertake its evaluations on an ongoing basis to assure its validity, if that's where you're heading.
Well, yeah, I knew y'all did. I just didn't know if maybe y'all were looking at maybe having an outside third party validate it, because in that kind of there's a level of objectivity that comes into
Our
play.
vendors, we do have vendors who are involved in that validation who are not a part of ASWB, but are paid to look at those statistics, and the 4 vendors that I mentioned on that slide all have different various roles. So that's where the external piece comes in. Absolutely.
Okay. And Doc, I missed when you were talking about the social work census. What was that about again? What is that again?
Oh, thank you. We're excited. So previously we've done practice analyses, we've done outreach, and remember that information draws up the blueprint for the exam. The exam becomes structured by the input from those colleagues. But the census, when you want to do a census, you want to reach everybody. We want to reach all social workers. And so we're investing in trying to make that as broad a call as possible, so that the blueprint that comes out, the blueprint that sets up the next version of the exam, has as many voices as possible. So that's why we're calling it the census. We want to, reach out to everyone. It's going to be a very comprehensive way that practicing social workers can give input about what people should be tested on to practice social work. So yes, thank you for another opportunity, and that should be launched in 2024.
All right, good deal. Thank y'all for coming here this morning. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, our pleasure.
And Daryl and Stacy and Dale, y'all can maybe y'all's memory is better than mine. I know at Delegate Assembly, there was a presentation back in November where data or information was provided about research that was done, specifically looking at schools who had the better level of pass rates and what factors were common among schools in that group. And it was things like gatekeeping, schools whose faculty was more licensed than not, schools who used multiple choice exams as part of their curriculum. And there was a fourth thing, and I don't remember what it was. Do y'all?
I'm going to defer to Lavina, and I'm wondering if she has a recollection of what that fourth thing is. And I think that those were some preliminary considerations that we certainly want to look more deeply into.
Yes.
So I don't know if you can give Lavina audio permissions.
We're looking for her. There she is. Lavina.
Okay.
All right, Lavina, you should.
Hello. Hey there, Lavina Harless. Great to talk with you all, and love hearing your questions and giving us an opportunity to kind of talk about some of the things that we're moving forward with here. Yes, we did. I remember that, Brian, back in it's been a few years ago, we commissioned some research for this from our foundation. So some educators were putting together some beginning research around this, and those were some of the major pieces. I can't, for the life of me now, I can't remember exactly what it was that they said, but those 3 factors were important as folks move forward in terms of having that investment from the educators, making sure that they're using those multiple choice items in their coursework and study. And that's one of the reasons why we have created this kind of educator suite, to make sure that educators have a sense of how to create high quality multiple choice questions and administer those in their programs, so that folks can become familiar with it. So yes, some of those pieces we are addressing now, and we're going to continue, as Dr. Hardy Chandler said, we're going to continue to dig in on what more we might be able to do to support candidates in that space as we learn more, and as we uncover more in light of us moving forward. So that's where we are. But thank you for giving me a chance to chat with you all.
Okay.
And this is Dale. If I could add one more thing to it, and this is certainly not to dissuade all of this great communication that is going to happen, has happened, and will continue to evolve. But also is understanding that the educational programs are not a prep course for an exam. They serve very different roles. And while the communication is very important and everything that was just said is also important, but understanding that the exam is not that capstone to an educational program. So you know, as Stacy mentioned, staying in the lanes is also important, including identifying the overlaps where these lanes do happen to overlap. So again, this is not a dissuading comment, but it is just a clarification comment. So as all this information is digested, that everybody understands the role of education and the role of a competence exam and the role of moral character assessment and the role of experience and other criteria.
And we're certainly willing to go up to the edges of those lanes in order to collaborate, for sure. You know, I think about it and I think this is supported by an article that's going to be published out of Rutgers, but, you know, there's educational competency, there's entry to practice, postgraduate competency, which is what we're talking about with the licensing exam. But the other part that we deal with in the regulatory world, and it's really important and to keep in mind, is, and it gets away from, you know, sort of that educational realm, but the continuing education, the continuing competence. So the educators, those years that they have with them, that's great, that's important, that's leading up to this realm. And we also know that we have the added responsibility for what happens across a person's 20, 30, 40-year career. So that maintenance of competence is another piece. So we're kind of dealing with that entry to practice competence now, but ASWB is also keeping an eye to that being the foundation for those decades of service that most of us are going to give to the social work profession.
Ben, did you have a question?
I did, kind of following in what Dale was talking about and Daryl. Dr. Hardy Chandler, I saw that there is an education guide to social work exams. And as a retired educator, that really has my attention, and I applaud y'all for having that. My question is, do you feel that the institutions are taking full advantage of that opportunity for their students?
My understanding is that historically they have not used that universally. That's why we have expanded the resources, made the group test and those kinds of things available for free. So schools do not have to pay anything for those resources. We set up that webinar to do some outreach with educators in December with over 400 attendees. So we're going to be monitoring the usage of that because we can tell who accesses that, not who, but you know, just how many. But we really want to encourage use of those absolutely free resources, and hopefully encourage educators to see that as something that complements it. One of the related questions that have come up around that is educators have asked, I have to teach the content and now I have to teach something else. Absolutely not. This is about how you teach your content, how you teach your curriculum in a way that even better prepares candidates for what is going to happen post-graduation. So yeah, I hope they use that more, and we encourage them to use that, and the webinar and the resources are all aimed at that. What we also know in social work is people have the right to self-determination. And some people, regardless of what we do in terms of outreach, are not going to. So, but we want to discourage that.
Their questions today.
Thank you so much.
All right. Any other board member have any questions? Okay, so we take questions from the public who are attending the meeting via Zoom at the end. Stacy, Dale, the rest of the ASWB folks, if we have questions that are specific questions related to topics we've discussed about that we're not able to answer, we will collect those and send those to you, get the answers so that we can then provide those to our attendees. But we do want to thank y'all. Stacy, I've enjoyed seeing the sunrise in California out your window this morning. So maybe now it's time for breakfast there. And thank you, Dale. I guess, are you coming to us from Chicago today? And I'm sure it's cold and windy and nasty. Okay, good. It's nice in Texas. So thank y'all. So thank y'all, ASWB folks. I know Jennifer was out there, Lavina, thank all of y'all for attending. And if we have any more input or our need for y'all from Texas, we will sure participate. And our next meeting will be in April. I don't know the date offhand, but we may 21st, you think? Yeah, we'll invite y'all back if we need to. So thank y'all again for coming this morning.
Yeah, April 21st.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Such an honor.
Okay.
And Happy New Year.
Oh, thank you. Y'all too. Thank you, Dale.
Excellent.
Okay, so we will, so board, any discussion or anything else related to the presentation by ASWB? Anybody have any input? Okay, I will report out here, I guess, that in April, I don't know the dates of that, but in April, ASWB's education conference will be in New Orleans, and I will be there as an attendee and a member of the REAL committee, which is regulation, education, and leadership. And I know Daryl has been invited to speak as to the use of using data to inform practice and how to improve the processes that states use. So anyway, that's coming up in April for anybody who's interested in that. So, all right. Well, if no board, so again, any questions from the board? All right. Seeing none, we will move to agenda item number 10, reports from committee chairs. So A is report from Ethics Committee Chair, Mr. Brumley, that is me, and I have nothing to report from the Ethics Committee. So then we will move to report from Licensing Standard and Qualifications Committee Chair, Ms. Mosier. Ms. Mosier is unable to attend today, but you have the information in your packet, and Sarah has
I can report that the
Report out.
licensing committee met since the last meeting and reviewed one case regarding, excuse me, regarding the supervisor's reservations. They reviewed the applicant's file and determined that they affirmed the supervision could be counted by staff. So that was resolved by the committee. In your packet, I'm just going to jump down one.
Yeah.
Ms. Moser is also the committee chair for the Rules Committee. And in your packet is a report from the Rules Committee when they met on, I think it was December 12th. Or it could be, yeah, December 12th. And that's 10D. The committee looked at 781.404A2 concerning types of supervision for clarity. The committee noted this section of the rules has undergone a number of recent changes and determined no revision is needed at this time. The committee referred the matter to staff for consideration during the statutorily required rule review, which is scheduled for, we believe, 2024. And they agreed with staff's suggestion to break the section into more specific focused pieces. The committee also reviewed results from the social work stakeholder comments. And that's in your packet as well, and is the next agenda item. So I won't go into many details for that. The committee discussed the possibility that licensees may only be pursuing continuing education after they've been notified of an audit. The committee noted that section 883.1, G as in George, under renewal of a license, states that a licensee who falsely reports compliance with continuing education requirements on his renewal form or who practices with a license renewed under false pretenses will be subject to disciplinary action. The committee determined no rule revision was needed at this time. The committee also considered a number of possibly related items concerning the licensed master social worker as an employee or contractor. The fact that an LPC associate may now open their own practice, but an LMSW is prohibited by rule. This is in 781.402C. An LMSW may not open their own practice to provide clinical services. And they looked at LCSW supervisors. There may be a trend that they are unwilling to take on the risk of supervising LMSWs. Attorney Hurt noted a high frequency of violations of 781.402C. This is the prohibition for LMSWs to open their own practice to provide clinical services. And these are resulting in a number of disciplinary actions. Also in 781.404, B as in boy, 8, D as in dog states, before entering into a supervisory plan, a supervisor shall be aware of all conditions of exchange with the clients served by his or her supervisee. The supervisor shall not provide supervision if the supervisee is practicing outside the authorized scope of the license. If the supervisor believes that a social worker is practicing outside the scope of the license, the supervisor shall make a report to the council. And also call to your attention in 781.102.11, it defines conditions of exchange. The committee affirmed Attorney Hyde's proposed direction concerning the 2024 statutorily required rule review in regard to an LMSW employed as a W-2 employee or a 1099 contractor, and providing the agency engages in sufficient oversight to ensure the well-being of the client. The agency referred to there is the employer or the person who contracts with the LMSW, that agency must provide sufficient oversight. The committee considered finally revisions to 781.302, the practice of social work, to clarify LBSW, the bachelor social worker, and the master social worker scope of practice, and due to other instances in the rules that speak to this issue, referred the matter for staff to consider during the statutorily required rule review. That concludes my report of the Rules Committee meeting. I'll entertain any questions.
So, board members, anybody have a question related to the committee report? All right, seeing none. We thank that committee for their hard work. I know that's Ms. Mosier. Who else is on that committee? Sarah, do you know off the top of your
Look at my
head?
list.
Asia, aren't you on the committee on rules now? I think it's Asia, and I don't know. I don't remember who else.
I
So,
have it at the top of the report.
okay.
The committee members are Ms. Mosier, Ms. Romsbacher, Ms. Rogers, and Ms. Science Davila.
Okay, so only one of those here today is Ms. Rogers. So we'll thank you for your efforts and work on that, and thank the others in abstention.
And then Pro-Dev committee report.
Okay. That concludes A, B, D. So then C, report from the Professional Development Committee. That is me. And again, we don't have anything to report out from the Professional Development Committee. So that will conclude agenda item number 10. And we will move on to agenda item number 11, discussion and possible action regarding Rules Committee recommendations concerning stakeholder survey results for crisis intervention experience and related continuing education, as well as discussion and possible action concerning 22 Texas Administrative Code 781-501 requirements for continuing education. So that is in your packet.
Would like to thank all that responded to our call for comments. I greatly appreciate your filling out our survey and our questionnaire. There were more than 1,200 responses. It was a lot to go through. I did a little bit of a summary for the board, but I haven't gotten all the way through it. There was quite a lot of material to go through, and I appreciate everyone's comments.
All right, so that's all related to changes and information related to the continuing education piece of our profession. Y'all can read that. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out and ask clarification for anything. It's some of the things in the CEU category are by statute, which are required by law, and then others are. So the legislator tells us some of the things we have to do, and then others we as a profession have provided there. So if you have any questions about how to get your 30 hours or what's included in your 30 hours of CEUs that you need, please reach out. One of the things that on a previous bullet that was discussed is, I've heard discussion from folks that say, well, my renewal's coming up and I'm going to do these CEUs, but I haven't done them yet. And if they go ahead and check that box, well, that checking of the box when things are not done, that constitutes fraud basically, because you're not being truthful. So make sure that when you complete your CEU, that you have your CEUs completed in a timely manner before renewal, because that can create issues. So any questions or information from the board needed about the CEU issue? All right, seeing none, hearing none, we'll move to agenda item number 12. Discussion and possible action concerning 22 Texas Administrative Code 781.501 requirements for continuing education and the effect of recent changes on programs recruiting field instructors. So this is an agenda item that I asked to be added to the agenda today, and you have in your packet a couple of pieces of information. The latest one being a letter from TFEC. TFEC is the Texas Field Educators Consortium, which is a group of universities in the state of Texas where field education is provided for a social work degree. Field education is required for the degree according to the CSWE accreditation standards. And historically, a person who is a field instructor, so that's a person out in the community where a student in a university setting has to do a number of clock hours in a social work setting to achieve their degree. So CSWE requires 900 clock hours for a master's degree, 400 clock hours for a bachelor's degree. So individuals who provide the supervision are determined to be field instructors. They're not university employees. Historically, they are just volunteers, basically. And they have been able to be awarded CEUs for their role as a field instructor. So that went away with 781.501. Do you remember when that went away, Sarah?
It was effective September 21.
September 21st or September 2021?
September 21st of 2022
Okay.
was the effective date of the current 781.501 requirements for continuing education.
Yes. Okay. So that went away in September of last year. And it does create, according to TFEC and other organizations, it impedes the ability sometimes to recruit field instructors, because historically they received continuing education hours for doing that volunteer service and training social workers in the field, and no longer is that available to be added. And they're asking that it be considered for reinstatement. So board, what do y'all think? Is that something that you want to send to, I guess that would go to rules?
It would go to the Social Work Rules Committee.
Yeah.
I deferred to Daryl whether it needs to be considered by the standardization work group.
Okay.
Yeah, this rule change came out of standardization. So any changes to it, we're going to be kind of cutting against the grain of what standardization sent up.
Okay.
Let me kind of share with you what this was talked about in standardization about, because MFT had something similar where they were giving their licensees credit for basically doing their job, doing the practice. And what we talked about was, it seems odd to be giving somebody continuing education, the purpose of which is to make sure that you're staying current and that you're not, we don't want to reinforce bad habits or any kind of intellectual inbreeding. And the purpose of continuing education is to make sure you're staying sharp and up to date on what the science behind the profession is. And so it seemed odd to say, well, we're just going to give you continuing education for doing what you normally do with your license. That, I got to tell you, from an outsider looking in, that doesn't make a lot of sense to award somebody CE credit for supervising somebody. I'm like, you do that anyway. So how does that, I mean, we could easily be reinforcing bad conduct there because you're not being forced to look at outside elements or outside sources. That was kind of a big thing that we talked about in standardization. The argument that this group's argument that it's going to hinder recruitment. What were they capped at? Like 15 hours, something like that?
I believe that's correct. I know it was 5 hours for a semester, and I think you could max out at 3 per year.
I'm gonna push back on the assertion that is going to hinder your ability to recruit. If that is what is, I don't know. I just really have a hard time believing that your inability to get 15 hours over a 2-year period.
I think we've lost our quorum.
Uh-oh. Yep, we did.
We still need one more though. We're still short of for a quorum. There we go. Sorry.
Okay.
Back. I had to wrangle the dog.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't know. There's just something about it that kind of, I don't know that I buy the argument that it hinders your recruitment. I'm like, if you're not getting people, you're not getting them for some other reason other than the fact they can't get 15 hours for supervising folks over a 2-year period. So I don't buy that argument. And I think there's a good governance concern there from the council's perspective about awarding CE credit for just practicing under your own license. I think there's an issue there.
Okay.
And just to clarify in my mind, these field instructors are not supervising post license.
You're correct.
This is overseeing the work of students, correct?
That is correct.
And the school which they are sponsored provides no compensation
Generally, no.
except workforce, their student
Yes.
workforce.
Yes, that is correct.
So they get the benefit of that student workforce, but they have the burden of overseeing that student.
Correct.
Do they get to bill for it, Brian?
No, not that I'm aware of.
They can't bill for services that student does.
I wouldn't think so, because the student is not yet, I mean, they're a student, they're not yet qualified
Right.
to do anything. So
I genuinely don't know.
I don't think they should, whether they can or not. I don't know, actually. I've never heard of it being done. So, all right, anybody else out there, board members, y'all have any input? I know some members of TFAC are here and want to comment during public comment, and we'll be happy to listen in at that point. So, Patrick, you have a
I was just going to say, I think the old rule capped it at 20 hours. You could get up to 20 hours.
I just pulled it up. A field instructor for social work intern will be granted 5 credit hours for each college semester completed, not to exceed 20 credit hours per renewal period.
Okay.
Thank you, Attorney Patrick.
Yeah. All right, and I guess then, so
Chair Brumley,
yes,
what's the impetus to do that then, other than, is there anything other than CE why you would do this? Why you would supervise like this?
Why you would be a field instructor?
Yeah.
So in my real world job, this is one of the things that I do. And I try to promote it as, when I have students that graduate and go out into the field and become professionals, I sort of couch it in the terms of giving back to the profession in a way that you were provided the same instance to. It's been, sort of that gift of CEUs has always been there. and now it went away. So other than that, some universities may, people do it in a lot of different ways. My university does not hire field instructors, so they're just basically volunteers. Then some universities may give some sort of credit, give you, access to certain things the university provides. We do provide free continuing education opportunities to our field instructor cohort that they can get, but it's by no means 20 hours of CEs. So it's just basically something that's historically been there that is now not there. And the question was, why was it removed? So that's sort of where we are today.
Well, the main reason why it was removed is the discussions we had about kind of the whole purpose of CE is to make sure you're getting outside education, basically. And just listening to you talk, I may very well be wrong on their ability to not recruit people if there's no other reason. If they're not getting anything out of this, I guess I'm trying to think I'm wondering if they're able to bill for services under their own name for, if they've got the student doing legwork for them, maybe administering evaluations, or I don't really know what all it is they would be doing, but I'm wondering if there's some kind of financial benefit they get out of having additional workers in the office helping them.
And I think that would be really a case by case. I know students who are in entities such as, inpatient psych hospitals that do things. I know the things they do are some way billed for, but working in a private practice setting or working in a nonprofit or something like that, I think it's just intrinsic that, the things that happen. Patrick, you have something else?
Yeah, I think part of the reasoning behind it is the standardization in that all of the other boards do require an internship during, their schooling, whether it's MFT psych or professional counseling. And so as a student, they do an internship and it's supervised by someone, but the others didn't provide continuing education. So I looked at it as an analogous situation with the field instructors for social work.
Okay. All right. Any other input on agenda item number 12? All right, we'll move on to 13, discussion and possible action concerning public comment on proposed rules published in the September 30th, 2022 Texas Register. To better align this rule with the statutory rights and duties listed in section 151.001, 53.132, and 53.371 of the Family Code, and recommendation to the Texas Behavioral Health Executive Council, the council, concerning possible adoption of proposed changes in 22 Texas Administrative Code 781.303 General Standards of Practice.
Staff reported no public comment was received.
So no public comment was received. So do we need to vote on this one, don't we?
Yes.
So board, in your packet, agenda item number 13 is aligning standards of professional conduct of a social worker. So the in your packet, you have agenda item 13. So 781.303 is now being shared there. Does anybody have any questions about what has happened here? So really, if you look at it, you scroll down to the bottom, number 9, there have been some things that have been redacted or taken out. So, and then highlighted there, and how we shall work and maintain good practice. So any questions about that? Sarah, any input from staff on this one? None?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, and having no public comment, so I would entertain a motion for the adoption of 781.303 agenda item 13. Oh, we lost everybody.
We still have them here.
Oh.
We just lost our TV feed.
Okay,
Oh,
there
it
it came
goes.
back. Okay,
Yeah, we're all still here.
okay. Yeah, it all went
Scary.
black. Yeah, so, all right, so I would entertain a motion for agenda item 13.
I motion to adopt the proposed changes.
Okay, so we have a motion from Member Schwartz.
I'll
I
second.
second.
Okay, have a second from, I think, Ben, you won. You were there first, so a second from Public Member Morris. So all in favor of adopting item number 13, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
So it passes unanimously, and we will move on then. Number 14, discussion and possible action regarding jurisprudence exam. A, board review and possible action concerning the quarterly summary from the Texas State Board of Social Work Examiners jurisprudence exam vendor. And then B, discussion and possible action related to changes in the board's jurisprudence exam. So that's number 14 in your packet.
So the report was included in your packet. If you have any questions, there were some changes for the rules that became effective November 23rd, and they were completed on November 22nd. So they were the exam was aligned with new rules as they were becoming effective.
So, and I know looking at comments, where are we on discussing taking out that timer?
It's been done.
So it's out now. So there's no longer a timer. Okay. So that should make our comment section a lot smaller, because that was always the major complaint. It takes too long. So at any rate, that's done. And I know most of the comments were fairly general and helps people indicate it did help understand practice and how it works. So
the timer was removed on October 11th. So
okay.
the next quarter's report will be, all of the exams will not have had that timer experience.
Okay.
Whereas in this quarter's exam, some did, some didn't.
Gotcha. Okay. So we don't need to take any action on agenda item 14. It is basically informational.
Correct.
So board, anybody have any input to the jurisprudence exam y'all need to talk about? All right, seeing none, we'll move to agenda item 15, report from board chair concerning current challenges and accomplishments, lawsuits, interaction with stakeholders, state officials and staff, committee appointments and functions, workload of board members, conferences, and general information regarding the routine functioning of the board. The only thing that I have to report out is I did attend the ASWB Delegate Assembly back in November, and had lots of interaction with the other states and provinces from Canada and US territories. I know Guam was there, and I don't remember who else, but we had a good opportunity to see how things in other states, regulatory issues in states, seem to mimic those across the nation. A lot of the same things we have. There was lots of discussion about the exam and ways in which we can improve outcomes for social work regulation. The focus right now is looking at data, looking at information as provided to how to direct the exam so that it can be improved and maybe meet the needs across diversity, equity, and all the areas that it's addressed. Y'all heard, if you're here, you heard the ASWB folks talk about they're looking at doing it in French in Canada. I know there's a push for it to be in Spanish as well. The issues that I heard, and not being bilingual or a Spanish speaker, I can only give you information that I was told there, that Spanish as a language in the United States has some differences geographically, and ASWB sees that as a hurdle that they're going to have to overcome to place the exam into the Spanish language or into Spanish. So I know, being a Texan, there are language barriers when you travel across the United States at times. So I can only imagine what it would be like as well in speaking Spanish across the United States. So that is something too that is being addressed. The other things that have come up, y'all are all aware, this is, the legislature for Texas is now going to be in session. I don't know, what is it, next week that they go into session?
Daryl would know better than I,
Well,
but he's. left.
Daryl disappeared. Patrick, you know when they go back into session?
I think that officially starts on the 10th.
The 10th, okay. So next week, the legislative session will come into full force, and allow for changes and things. And I know we get an update on all the things that affect regulation, social work, and the other agencies that we deal with. So, stay on your toes. If you get, board members, if you get questions or information from constituents out there, social workers in the world, refer them into us and refer them back to the board. If anybody has any input that's relevant to making some changes, let us know, and we'll be sure, we want to be part of informing the process. So just be aware of that. That's really all the information that I have. Committee appointments are going to stay as they are. There's no changes needed at this time that I'm aware of. Anything you know of about committees? Everybody's staying where they are for now. Okay. All right. So that was 15, 16. Report from the board's delegates to the Texas Behavioral Health Executive Council regarding the activities of the Executive Council, including rulemaking taken at its October 25th meeting and other council updates. So the changes to rulemaking are all included in the board packets, and information is very clear on the board's website, both social work and BHEC. You can read any of the changes in the rules, and they're always open for discussion for public comment to the public, board members included. So I don't have any other information. Asia is the public member to the board. Asia, do you have any comment or input? No, she's shaking her head no.
I do not.
Okay, so that will conclude that. Number 16. I'll move to 17, report from board administrator concerning operations, organization and staffing, workload, processing, statistical information, status of rulemaking, customer service accomplishments, inquiries, challenges, media, legislative stakeholder contacts, concerns, special projects, and general information regarding the routine functioning of the program. So it's a lot. So Sarah, Daryl.
So I wanted to announce that there was a release in December of 2022 from this the Special Committee to Protect All Texans. That's a legislative committee that will be discussed on January 31st at the council's meeting. So if you'd like to tune in and hear that again, that'll be discussed at the council's meeting on January 31st. I want to thank NASW Texas for having me as a presenter and exhibitor on behalf of the Social Work Board at their conference in Galveston in October. It was such a well-organized and well-run conference. They had multiple activities that brought people by the booth. Most of my visitors to the table asked questions about they were either students or returning to school and were asking about what they need to do for the exam. And NASW had placed ASWB's table right next to mine. So I could say, here's what you need to know about your license. And here's Dave to tell you about the ASWB exam and what you need to do for that. I had about 40 people in my session, great audience and well-run tech support for that. They asked some really good questions about the new rules and were attentive to the rules that became effective in November. So I just wanted to thank NASW for having us for that. I did include in your packet, I received as a presenter, I received evaluations. So I included that for the board members review in your packet if you care to look at that. I just wanted to bring to the board's attention that part of my presentation from September 1, 2020, when BHEC launched, to August 31st, 2022, we've made some significant progress. In September 1 of 2020, we inherited 2,442 social work applications that were in a backlog. 0 of those are remaining as of August 31st, 2022, perhaps slightly earlier than that, but that was the date that I looked at. We also received 100, we were at the time that HHSC, before the BHEC, we were at 175 days for processing exam eligibility. We've now had that with ASWB for quite some time. They now process the exam eligibility and they're reporting about 11 days for that process. We were at 185 days for initial licensure as of the end of quarter, the fourth quarter, for that would be the August 31st, 2022 date. We were at 33.5 days for initial licensure. And we were at 199 days for reclassifying LMSW to LCSW. And at the end of the quarter of 2022, we were processing at 11.3 days for that reclassification. So again, that's quite a bit of significant progress. And I thank staff and all their hard work and management for their direction on all of that. Please note that social work guidelines for social media and for electronic practice, 2 different pieces, were posted on our website on October 7th, and I'll show you where those are in a few minutes. I attended the ASWB Administrators Forum on November 17th, as well as with Chair Brumley, but virtually at the ASWB Delegate Assembly on November 18th and 19th. They did announce that a couple of testing, I can't find the Zoom meeting back. They did announce a couple of testing changes beginning January 1. So I just wanted to bring those to your attention. And so beginning January 1, as Dr. Hardy Chandler explained that the 3-option multiple choice would be phased in beginning January 1. This is to relieve I believe they called it a cognitive workload. There's less to read as you're going through the exam. They will allow access to some food. It's a 4-hour exam, I believe. So they're allowing some test takers to get a snack from their locker. And also they used to have a security bag that you put your cell phone in, and they're no longer requiring that security bag type of thing. But you still cannot take your cell phone into the exam. But they wanted to balance that security with some comfort and concerns of the test takers. So that's on ASWB's website, but just wanted to bring it to your attention. The Social Work Compact. There's a meeting scheduled in Washington, D.C. on February 6th through the 10th. The initial draft, so just to reiterate, the compact is a legislative piece that each state legislature must enact as that state's law in order to participate in the compact. So they've drafted that piece of legislation, and they asked earlier this fall, they asked for feedback from all the social work stakeholders, and they are now looking at that feedback, and they will be preparing a revised draft of that legislation, that bill. And so that will be that's what the meeting in Washington in February is to finalize that revised draft, and then it'll be I believe it will either be put out to stakeholders for review again, or it will go to the legislatives, the different states legislatures, to see if there is someone who will sponsor it as a bill. So that's where we are on the compact. And if you Google Social Work Compact, you'll get the Council on State Government's webpage, and you can see the updates there. You can subscribe to updates from their webpage. We had some questions earlier about how do I know if I'm under a CE audit? So I wanted to share my screen and show you that. This is the homepage of the Behavioral Health Executive Council. That's www.bhec.texas.gov. If you're there at the homepage, these 4 member boards are also links. So if you click on the social work boards link, you'll get the social work board pages, and a quick list down the right-hand side shows you frequently asked questions, or FAQs. Click on the frequently asked questions button, and you can scroll down to how do I know if I'm under a CE audit? And click on the plus sign to get the answer. And you can see on the right-hand side is the blue postcard that you get to notify you that your license is under renewal. On the right-hand side is what you would get if you're under a CE audit. So if you're getting a letter on a white letterhead, you're under CE audit and your license must be renewed. But if you're getting the blue postcard, you are not under a CE audit. Also keep in mind that staff opens the window to renew your license up to 60 days before your expiration date. That gives you time to get your CE. If you haven't already, I encourage you to already have it done before then, to get it in order, to go online, answer the questions, pay the fee. And while you're online, there is a link on how to complete the fingerprint process if you have not already done so for our agency. So be aware that you must complete the fingerprint process before staff can renew the license. We have a number of inquiries of people who report that they have finished the online renewal and paid the fee through the online renewal process back in June, May, July, August, but their license still shows delinquent because they did not complete the fingerprint process, and staff cannot renew the license until that's done. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention as well. Oh, and I was going to show you how to find the guidelines. Let me do that real quick, and then I think that will conclude my report. So back at from the homepage, from www.bhec.texas.gov, click on the social work board link to get the social work board's web pages. In the quick links on the right-hand side is forms and publications. Click on that quick link. Scroll down to publications heading, and you'll see, the policies and guidelines heading, and you'll see links to those two new guidelines. So just wanted to bring that attention of new information from the board. Also, while I'm here, if you have not already done so, you may wish to sign up for email updates, so you get direct to your email box notices about rule changes, proposed rules, and calls for public comment, board meetings, etc. From the homepage, click on the quick link email updates, complete the web form. You'll get an email to confirm the subscription process, follow those prompts, and then you're subscribed. Unless there are questions, I believe that completes my report. Oh, I did want to thank staff for updating the statutes and rules, the consolidated rule books. New rules became effective on November 23rd, and staff completed the new rule books in early December. Let me show you where those are real quick. I apologize for jumping back and forth. Again, this is our homepage. You'll slide over to the social work boards quick link, and then down to the statute and rules quick link. And here you can find the new consolidated rule book. When you click on that link, you can see that you have the most recent update because it's dated. So if you've downloaded this in the past, I encourage you to download it again so you have the newest edition. Thank you again to Brenda and any of her staff that may have helped. And that concludes, finally, my report.
Okay, and you said some things that kind of jarred my memory there, Sarah, so I want to add to that. One of the things is, I don't know if it's part of this packet, but board members, I think we should have gotten an email from Tim Spear back in the past after our last meeting that talked about how legislative inquiries are down significantly since the move from HHSC to BHEC. And that is a sign of, in Tim's words, the sign of a healthy agency. Legislative inquiries are when licensees or the public are upset about something or have a question about something, and they contact their legislator, their elected representative's office, and they then contact us for something. And I know those have decreased significantly. I think Sarah's got it up there now. They've gone from in fiscal year 21, is that 346 legislative inquiries in 21, down to 25 in fiscal 22, and so far none for fiscal 23. So that's a very positive change. And as indicated, I think the fiscal year 21 had to do a lot with the sort of just the snafus that happened when one agency, we left HHSC and became our own BHEC agency. And there were some things that just happened that people needed clarification for. So those inquiries came about. The other thing, Sarah mentioned being at NASW in Galveston, and we did have a question, and I wanted to comment on. We had some faculty from universities that talked about the cost of the criminal history letter.
Yes.
Remember that? So yeah, and we looked at it, and at one time I think it was like $50, and now it's up, and I think it's now like $150 to have that done. So I questioned or asked about that to Daryl and some of the staff here. It is a very burdensome process that staff have to go through to do that criminal history evaluation. Therefore, that's why the cost change took place. So it wasn't just to charge people more money. There are lots of steps that have to be taken to get that full background. So someone can have current information about their status. And that's something that we encourage all people who have a criminal history that they're concerned about to do prior to enrolling into an academic program that comes with a licensure opportunity at the end. So that way, you know, going into a program, what your outcome could be as far as obtaining licensure at the other end. So it is worth the cost of $150 to not go ahead and spend whatever it costs to get a degree and then find out that you can't become licensed. So that's all I got to add to yours.
Okay.
All right. So any questions for Sarah or I about agenda item number 17? All right, we'll go to agenda item 18, discussion and possible action regarding future priorities and activities of the board. So other than our upcoming meeting, I don't have any current updates about things that are on future agendas.
So we do have some rules that are in queue that are under public comment right now. Public comment on those rules will close, I believe, on January 16th. So that's too late for this meeting, but they will be on the agenda at the April agenda. So if you're a member of the public, please look at those rules and send us your comment. That's all I have for that.
Okay, and just for the public's information, we did look at those rules to see if they were things that we needed to have special meetings for, or to try to bring up sooner than the April meeting. But they're not rules that are going to impede anyone in practice. So they're not going to hold anybody up from getting a job or continuing in a job. So we, I made the decision with Sarah that we'll just have those on the April meeting instead of having an in-between meeting. So other than that, I guess our any of the board members have any input for anything as far as future priorities or activities that we need to partake on? All right, seeing lots of heads shake no, so we'll move on then. So we're now open for public comment. So I'll turn this over to Sarah as she's running the computer, and we'll have public comment. I will say, if you would like to use the public comment feature, you need to use the raise hand feature in Zoom to indicate you would like to make public comment. And it is limited to 3 minutes per person, not per topic, but per person. So once you are on for public comment, I think, is it is Patrick keeping the time? Patrick, are you out there keeping time?
I think Patrick has the application.
If you want me to, I'll start it up.
Okay, please do.
So just a little housekeeping thing. We have no public attendees here in the room with us. Normally, if they were here, they would be offered public comment first. Those who are attending by computer will be offered the second opportunity or be next in line to have an opportunity. Again, as Chair Brumley said, use the raised hand feature to indicate that you'd like to make a public comment. And then I will click a button that allows you to unmute. Once all individuals who have raised their hands via the computer to make a public comment have had that opportunity, then I will call on those who are attending by telephone and I will ask them to unmute. *6 is generally how you unmute if you are attending by telephone. The public comments are limited to 3 minutes. Please note that public comment is not intended as a discussion or a question and answer session with the board members. It's kind of a one-way street for you to tell the board, ask the board your questions or tell the boards your concerns. But the board may not be prepared to respond to your questions at this time. It is also not the preferred venue for speaking about a particular complaint or a particular application. Some of the items in a complaint or in an application are private material, should remain confidential. So we ask if you have a comment or a concern about a particular complaint or about a particular application issue, please use our Contact Us webpage so that we can serve you in a more confidential manner rather than this public meeting. In lieu of providing this live verbal public comment, you may at any time submit written public comment to the board, and your agenda includes a link to a new form that we're using for that public comment for a particular meeting. This is different than public comment for a rule. Only written public comment that's received by 5 p.m. on the last business day prior to the meeting is submitted to the board members for their consideration. It's not read aloud, but the board members have it to review. And if they so choose, they may ask that it be added to a future agenda, either through this meeting or by sending me an email before or after this meeting or before or after they've read the public written comment that's been received. With that, I will go to the attendees. It appears that we have 5 people who have used the raised hand feature. And the first, Kathy Ryder. You have public comment. If you would please identify yourself and whether you are speaking for yourself or an entity or an organization.
I am Kathy Ryder. I'm a member of the Texas Society for Clinical Social Work, as well as NASW and the Clinical Social Work Association. I wanted to thank the board for having Dr. Stacy Hardy Chandler and Dale Atkinson to come and talk about the concerns that we in the profession have about the national exam administered by ASWB. I wanted also to make a comment about, there was some discussion earlier about LMSWs opening their offices independently. That is a long-held value within the profession, that an immediate graduate of a school of social work and being licensed as an LMSW needs to have experience for protection of the public before offering services without supervision or otherwise monitoring of their activities. I was a little confused about the crisis intervention, did not understand the rationale, and I understand this is not a discussion, but asking LCSWs or even LMSWs to have a requirement annually or with annual renewal period for crisis intervention is like asking a physician to have a continuing ed on a physical exam. Crisis intervention is a basic social work skill that all social workers know how to do. So I really don't understand the rationale with that. With regard to the continuing education requirements that went into rules effective September 21st, 2022, I would just make the suggestion that you might want to consider a grace period that they go into effect like September the 21st, but for staff purposes, that you give at least 3 months for people to be able to adjust their continuing ed activities so that they can meet the new rules. As a member of Texas Society for Clinical Social Work, I have fielded almost 75 inquiries within days of sending out a practice alert about the continuing ed, and continue to get questions about, well, now what does this mean and why is that? And, you know, I understand that social workers in the field may not be as up to date as rules as we would want them to be, but you might want to consider that grace period. Again, thank y'all for your service and appreciate all the work that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ryder. Mariah Boone. You have public comment?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Wonderful. Hi, I'm Mariah Boone. I am the co-chair of the Texas Field Education Consortium. And I'm speaking on our behalf of the consortium today.
Thank you.
I wanted to speak on item 12 today about continuing education for field instruction. I feel like our practicum experience is really not standard with internship experiences in the other professions, and that's why this is possibly an issue. I'm not particularly concerned about continuing education as a recruitment issue, but just about the fact that I think it qualifies and should, because of the amount of work that the field instructors are putting into it. Our practicum experience in social work is our signature pedagogy. It is much more extensive than an internship where you just go and try to, behave like a practitioner in the agency, like an employee would. And the supervision that our interns receive from their field instructors and their agencies is much more educationally based than something that would be based from, that practicing social worker's job. And essentially, our field instructors in the agencies are like volunteer faculty. And in order to fill that role, I think they qualify for continuing education in a couple of big areas. One is that if they were teaching a social work course as a university employee, they would qualify. And if they were teaching trainings, to other social workers, they would qualify. But field instruction includes so much of both of those. They're training social workers on treatment modalities, on engagement skills, assessment skills, intervention skills, evaluation skills, documentation, diverse populations in the service community, advocacy, ethics, and research in a way that it's fundamentally different than just the way you would be training an employee. It is the students in their field placements must master the core competencies of our social work educational standards. And in order to do that, the field instructors really are teaching. And the other area is because the field instructors really are learning in this process as well. In order to be able to teach the students in that way, they really have to put in the time to make sure that they are keeping up with best practices in the profession. They have to learn a lot about the competency areas for social work education, which is something that, if you were in practice and sorry, time's up.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
David Marsden.
Yes, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm David Marsden. I am an LCSWS with about 27 years of experience as a professional social worker. I am in Fort Worth, Texas. Go Horned Frogs. I work for Cook Children's Medical Center, which is historically an organization that has taken on a lot of field placement students. We take on students from UT Arlington, TCU, Tarleton, and Baylor. Sometimes we also take on students from online programs at LSU. With the change in not providing continuing education support, I know that I personally will not be taking any more students. It was already a net loss for me to begin with. I would say that my workload increases about 66% for each student that I take on. That means me staying later to get my work done because I've had to spend time in my day educating the student on what they need to learn. It is so much more than just me doing my job and having somebody else observe it. I understand the logic in saying that it really doesn't make sense to provide continuing education for someone who is training someone else on what they already know. But I think Ms. Boone made a very good point that if we're going to provide that level of continuing education for professors and university instructors who are really teaching what they already know as well, then it's not logically consistent to not provide that same continuing education for field instructors. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this, and thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you, David.
Jessica Johnson.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Jessica Johnson. I've been a social worker for 20 years. I recently just passed the LCSW exam in October. It took me 6 times to pass the test. Each time I missed it by 1 point. The first 3 times I took the test, my hours expired, so I submitted to the board and had to retake my 3,000 hours all over again, pay again that money for the 2 years. Took it again twice, and then on the 3rd time, I finally passed, each time missing it by 1 point. I submit that we don't have to wait 90 days to retake the exam because of the knowledge and the studying that it's hard to, we're already retaining so much information, and we lose that with the 90-day wait. That's very difficult. And then also with the 20 questions that we have to take, even though they're not scored, one would think if you were missing it by 1 or 2 points and you've possibly gotten one of those non-scored questions answered, that should go towards your score, since basically we're being used to further their study if the question is going to be a go in the future. $235 each time someone fails a test, and they have to wait the 90 days and retake it. The mental anguish that is associated with that. I just want to make that known. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Helen Harris.
Yes, thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity and appreciate all of the hard work you all do in supporting social work and supporting professional boards as well. My name is Helen Harris. I'm an LCSW who's been licensed since the beginning of licensure in Texas. I recently retired from Baylor University School of Social Work. Now, prior to that, I had many years of experience in childcare and foster care and adoption and in hospice. I'm interested in just talking briefly about the importance of licensure. I've heard informally that there's conversation about perhaps eliminating the exam in the licensing process. I want to encourage you not to do that and to keep licensure as strong and productive and meaningful as possible. I served as a writer for ASWB for 3 years. I've seen their rigorous process. I've seen the benefit of licensure for the protection of the public and for the credibility of the profession. And so I really encourage you to hold firmly on that. I am concerned about the disparate results. I see important response from ASWB and being concerned about that as well, and trying to address maybe one of the more fundamental problems, which is the importance of strengthening the importance of licensure in the academic programs. And I'm glad that they're having some focus on that. We have a strong process that can be strengthened. I appreciate all your work to strengthen that. Just a quick word about field instruction and another word of clarification. Previous speakers have already done a good job of explaining how important it is that field instructors have some time recoup and benefit for their work. Field instructors are instructing. Their work is to teach students and to connect theory to practice and to evaluate and assess practice skills and competencies. It's educational work. And in order to do that, they've got to stay current on what the best evidence-based practices are and how to communicate those, demonstrate those, and require those from the students who are working with their clients. That also means that field instructors are accepting the responsibility of a student's work under their license. And so they've just got to do it well, and they know that. So I hope you'll perhaps give that a little more consideration. With gratitude again for your service and for the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next one is Canetta Center. You have public comment? Would you state your name as well?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Dr. Letty Cavazos, and I am an NASW member, and I'm also the founder and owner of Canetta Center and the founder of Canetta Foundation. And so I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my organization. We strive to serve the Hispanic community, and we seek to find bilingual clinicians, social workers that are able to do so. But what we're finding is that individuals who are bilingual have a harder time passing the exam for multiple reasons. One of the things that we know, I'm just going to back up a little bit, is that the Hispanic population is growing in Texas. And so there's going to be a higher need for bilingual social workers to be present. And one of the surveys that NASW conducted last year showed that bilingual social workers who did not pass the test the first time stopped taking it. 55% stopped taking it after the first attempt, 18% after the second, and 18% after the third. On our team alone, I have 3 MSWs have taken the test 3 to 5 times and have not been able to pass the test. Part of what we do at the foundation is we try to elevate those bilingual social workers to be able to serve the community at a higher level by helping pay for the test, because it's an undue financial burden every time they have to retake the test over and over again to try to pass it. And I heard Dr. Harding Chandler speak about the exam and the validity and the reliability. And I guess my question is, if we are only looking at surveying and getting responses from those that are licensed, we're missing a whole population of individuals who have struggled to pass the test to get their input on their experiences. And so what I'd like to recommend and put forward is that we support reinstating the alternative method of exam competency for social workers that are bilingual. One of the things that Dr. Harding Chandler did mention is that translation of words does not mean translation of meaning. And so when you're asking an individual to sit in an exam and translate the test questions in their mind, that does not mean they comprehend what is being asked in the question. So the alternative method would give another opportunity to confirm competency and the social worker's ability to elevate more bilingual social workers in Texas. And thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Mr. Francis, NASW Texas.
Yes, my name is Will Francis, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. Again, as always, thank you to the board for the hard work and for the presentation today. I have to say I was really, really disappointed by this board here. There was no update to the public that ASWB would hear. Agenda item number 9 does not identify them. Their PowerPoint was not shared in the meeting materials, and there was no solicitation of comments from the public for ASWB, which many other states have done. It almost seems like they were brought in really without anyone knowing about it. And I would say that means there's only half the conversation that happened today. We only heard from the people who write the test, people who have a financial interest in the test, and the people who are very keen on having that test remain here. So I think that this board really needs to open up a town hall and to have people from across Texas who take the test and who have experiences with the test share their actual input. Because so far today, we only had half the conversation. I heard a lot of deflection as well. I heard a whole lot of reasons why schools need to do a better job. Licensure needs to be taught more there. And they need to use these tools from ASWB. I heard the pipeline criticized. I heard a lot of other things. And while I support ASWB and what they're doing and working on changing the test, I don't think that ultimately what they shared was really about as much accountability as it was where all the other pieces need to be changed. And I think that's a really big issue, because one of the things we did not hear today was the incredible cost. You take the test 3 times, you're spending almost $1,000. We didn't hear about alternative methods, which needs to be brought up. We didn't hear about all of those other varied ways that people who want to practice in Texas are impeded. And when ASWB put their stats on their slide, they only showed the final pass rates. They did not show anything by race, ethnicity, age, or gender here in Texas. And so the fact that we didn't see those means we didn't see just how huge these disparities are. We need more social workers in Texas, and we need more diverse social workers in Texas. And the exam is preventing that from happening, which means that it is not a fair and impartial exam, which is what our statute calls for. And so I would really say to this board, have a town hall, bring in those social work voices from across the state, let them speak to you all directly, give them the opportunity to put their voices here, as I think that's incredibly important. And then I'll just add lastly that NASW most definitely supports bringing back continuing education hours for field instructors. It is a class that the students take. The field instructor gives a pass grade, fail grade on it. And I think that's a really important part of the puzzle and why some hours should be counted. So thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Will.
D. Lynn Jackson. You have public comment?
Hi, I'm Dr. Lynn Jackson. I'm at Texas Christian University, the field director there. I think Mariah did an excellent job, and so did the others, about speaking about why we need field instructors. What I hope is that the board will consider, and I appreciate you all so much, but I ask that you reconsider and go back and read the letter that Mariah submitted on behalf of TFEC, because I think when you read it, you will see that it's talking a lot more about the issues rather than just that we're worried about recruiting field instructors. Although I think I'm in Fort Worth, and hearing that David Marsden won't be a field instructor anymore is very disappointing. And I hope that others don't take the lead, but I think he makes an excellent case. They are doing a lot of extra work. I served as a field instructor many years myself, and I can tell you it is way more than just doing the job and having someone follow you along. And I think those points have already been said, so I won't belabor it. But I hesitated to speak, but I think it's important that you understand and hear from as many of us as possible that this is something that really has to do more than just recruiting, but really about fairness and equity to the people that are doing it, especially as we're asking the field instructors to take on a lot of extra work. So thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Lynn.
Alex Green Honore or Honore. You have public comment? I'm sorry, Alexis.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Can you hear? Okay. Yes. Hi. I am Alexis Green Honore. I have recently finished school with my master's in social work, and I have taken this exam 3 times, going on 4. Every time I have taken it, it's within a point of passing, and I'm sure it's just sounding repetitive at this point, but the exam is costly. To prepare for the exam has been also a financial strain on myself. And then also, I am unable to find employment in the field that I went to school for and what I am longing to do, and to be able to serve my community because I'm unable to pass what I feel is a very biased exam. Many of my peers and colleagues that have taken this exam, it has taken 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tries until they pass. And then you also have to start the process over again after a year. So it is very cumbersome as well as frustrating because you want to get in the field, do the work that you sought out to do, but are unable to do so because of the exam. Also, for myself, I have very high test anxiety. I have always had test anxiety since a child. And this test causes 10 times more anxiety because I'm not a good standardized test taker, but I do all that I can to prepare for the exam. And it seems like an alternative method needs to be in place for those that either struggle with test taking, especially standardized tests, and also focusing the exam just not on one, as I feel, one ethnicity group, one population of people. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kurt Oster, you have public comment?
Good morning and thank you. My name is Kurt Oster. I am a licensed clinical social worker, recently licensed in Texas. I am a nationally credentialed Academy of Certified Social Workers. I serve as a chair of one of the equity committees of NASW, Texas. I want to stand and say that I actually stand behind Will Francis's observation that while we did hear a lot from ASWB, we continue to hear the deflections that they put onto other agencies. I, as an individual trying to take the exam myself, had to take it multiple times, much like everyone else speaking, missing it by 1 or 2 points. Every time I tried to get some assistance, there was deflection from ASWB. It was Pearson VUE's problem. It was this person's problem. It was never ASWB. The cost of the exam to continue to take it becomes a financial burden on social workers. Much like the education field, some states require you to continue to pay for the exam over and over. I know for me, when I got my teaching degree and my credentials, I only had to pay for the exam once. If you failed it, you were able to continue to retake it until you passed it without any further financial burden. I agree with Will Francis that also we do need a public forum, town hall meeting, so that social workers can speak to the board and speak to the continued issues of the challenges passing the examination. I have seen over my time as a social worker, 15 years in practice and recently getting licensed, I have seen some amazing colleagues and social workers leave the field because of the continued inequities that they face trying to pass the examination, particularly for individuals with disabilities. Texas's law does allow for the accommodations granted by the board, but there are many other state boards that do not do the accommodations process, and that is handled by ASWB, which causes great financial burden, particularly when ASWB keeps denying the psychological reports that these individuals get. These psychological reports can on average cost $1,200. If you think about the math with that, you have one person doing a psychological report, then having to pay for the exam over and over, it becomes very costly. I thank this board for their continued work that they do, and thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you.
Next one is listed as Duoda J, Duodeh. You have public comment?
Yes. My name is John B. Doda Jr. I am originally from Monrovia, Liberia, that's West Africa. I've been living in the States since 2008. And I started my educational career at Baton Rouge Community College in Louisiana, enrolled at Louisiana State University. And then I went to Capella University. Now, to what most of the past speakers have said concerning this exam, it has been very, very, very frustrating when it comes to passing the exam. Me personally, the language in which the test is rating, it becomes so difficult. I have a lot of study materials that I've been using to help to pass this exam. The materials that I've been using have been very, very helpful. But now when I go sit on to take the exam, the wordings are so all over the place. The language, some of the vocabularies is just so difficult for some of us, to understand. One of the main factors is that as a dad, to a 2-year-old, to a 2 sons, and pretty soon I'm about to be a father of 3, it is very, very challenging. Inflation, as you all know, is on the course right now. And paying $230 for an exam and keep on paying it is very, very difficult on me personally. I have taken the exam 2 times and I've been unsuccessful. As we speak right now, I'm scheduled again, to take the exam again, to see if I can pass it. And one of the things that Will said, which I would like to, that should have been done, me personally, I thought that was what the meeting was about, trying to give our opinions to these members of the ASW board. That was my impression, but I think that was not the case. And I think you guys need to hear from students, people that are having challenges, about this exam, to see what would be in the best interest of students, to pass the exam. I work as a housing specialist, dealing with a lot of clients, that mental health. I like what I do, but at the end of the day, it's very challenging. Texas, as of now, has a population of 30 million plus people. Okay, so social work is going to be very, very important. And some of us right now having a mindset to try to seek other profession, just to provide ends meet for our family. We cannot go to school and be successful at school, and then at one exam, it just keep on being a hindrance, for us. So at the end of the day, I hope there will be another forum on this where students like myself, people like myself will address the board directly, so they can hear from us. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised from people who are attending by computer. And I don't see anyone who's called in by phone. So I believe that ends public comment.
Okay, thank you to all of those who took opportunity to wait through the meeting and speak today. And know that your public comments are listened to, and we do take notes and get information from those to plan for future meetings. So the feedback from the public is a very important process of our meeting. And again, thank you to all of those. So, but that does conclude agenda item 19, the public comment section. So agenda item number 20 is announcements and comments not requiring board action, such as statements regarding conferences and other recent or upcoming events. So I think Sarah's got a list of those.
So January 20th, ASWB has a board of directors meeting. You can go to their website for more details. January 31st is our council meeting. April 21st is the next social work board meeting. And then what I have there is more council and social work board meetings. So I'll stop with April 21st.
Okay. So any board members have any input on agenda item number 20 as far as announcements or upcoming information? All right, seeing none. We'll move to adjourn. So that will conclude all of the agenda items as indicated. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Ben. I need a second.
I second.
I have a second. I believe that was Megan and Katie both. So all those in favor of adjourning can signify by saying aye and leaving the meeting.
Adios.
Thank you all for attending today.
Bet.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.